Hi, Bookaholics. Thanks for joining me today. Today, we are going to talk to Dr. Marni Hill Foderaro. Welcome, Marni.
Oh, Deirdre, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I love the title, Bookaholic. This is just fantastic.
Well, thank you. It truly is a holism. I have tons and tons of books. And, I just love to read, but I also like to shop for books. So I'm really who I say I am.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Marni, again, thank you for joining us today. And you are a woman of many talents and many careers. And I kind of want to take my listeners today through your whole thing so that we can get to actually why are here. A lot of times people definitely want to know a writer's journey and how they got to writing, especially after leaving other careers that may have been totally unrelated to writing. A lot of the times spoken to people about that with those type of situations. And so we want to get know a little bit more about Marni. So Marni, you were a teacher for maybe 35 years, I believe it was.
Yeah. I taught special education, high school, for 35 years. I retired in 2019. 12 of those years, I was a university graduate school adjunct professor. So I'm
Right.
someone who has always loved to read and write. I'm just a lover of
Yes.
learning.
Yes, yes, yes. And
Yeah,
so
but
you
my journey though was, I was kind of living the American dream. And, I realized that the person I was married to did not align with my values. And I kind of ignored red flags for 27 years. And finally, when I mustered up the courage to file for divorce and escape that, you know, a situation, there were significant losses.
yeah.
I lost my home, I lost my assets, my money. I even lost two adult children to parental alienation, just a devastating form of child abuse I would never wish on any wonderful dad or wonderful mom. But,
Mhm.
I am someone who always looks at challenges and adversity with
Yeah.
the lens of love and of learning. And so at one point, I had to have a garage sale and leave this house. And I had some spiritual miracles that came my way. And after doing a lot of research about them to understand what I went through, I was compelled, like so many other people, to write a book. So I put pen to paper to write about my experiences. And
Yes.
I wrote the spiritual fiction, God Came to My Garage Sale.
Okay.
However, it's a fiction, but it's inspired by true experiences that happened to me. And it was endorsed by James Redfield, who is the
Oh,
best-selling author of The Celestine Prophecy. And
okay.
that was amazing. And it's won many awards, and it's just resonated with a lot of people. It's a book club favorite, and is actually where I'm in talks with it to become a movie. So it's pretty
Wow. Wow.
yeah, yes.
Well, before we delve into any more of that title that I love,
Thanks.
let's go back to where you were speaking because there's a twofold process to your story. And some of your story touches on, I would say, mental health awareness, maybe in the long form, because of your divorce, maybe in all these things. You've written several books that focus on particular I don't know, I'm trying to describe what, like, the narcissistic,
Right.
all of
Yes.
that. So could you tell us first of all a little bit about those books? I think you said there's 6, maybe.
Well, I'm writing the 6th book. Right now, it's
Oh.
a 5-book series
Mhm.
called True Deceit False Love. And
True Deceit False Love, another
yes,
great title.
thank you.
Okay, so take
Thank you
us
so
down the road of all 5.
well. True Deceit False Love is a series of books that provide resources and tools and a creative response to have people understand their experiences related to domestic violence, to
Mhm.
narcissistic
Mhm.
abuse to parental
Mhm.
alienation. And then it's so important to do the inner work, that shadow work, to kind of find out your foundational patterns that made you a target for an abuser. What are some things about you and your lack of boundaries that you need to change? So it also addresses intergenerational family trauma. So
Mm.
those books, one is terms and phrases, actually 15,555 terms and phrases on all of this family trauma. And the
Mm.
second book is acrostic poetry to bring awareness and information on these terms and phrases. Not necessarily autobiographical by any means. It's actually poetry that I wrote from various people's point of view, from an abuser's point of view, from a
Okay.
victim, from a child, from a grandparent. You know, family trauma involves everyone.
Yeah.
And so the third book is a survivor's workbook. The fourth book is some free verse poetry, and the fifth book just turned out to be a bestseller. It is a word search puzzle book. Very
Oh,
different approach to deal with trauma, so you can kind of
right.
distract yourself at the same time you're moving forward, connecting the dots, learning about what you've gone through.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Wow, unreal. Now, so let's go back and frame it. We already know you were a special education teacher for 35 years. We already know you were an adjunct professor for 12. Now, you don't have any psychological or any of these type of backgrounds, correct?
No, no. In fact, just like many people who are victims of some family trauma, you go along life not realizing that you are involved with some abusive or toxic people until your light bulb goes on. So no, I didn't
Yeah.
have a background besides just my psychology classes in my undergrad and graduate and doctorate programs. Um,
Mhm,
but
mhm.
no, it wasn't until I had to really learn about this because I found myself, you know, as a victim and
Yeah,
trying to understand how bad things can happen to good people. And I needed to really learn about not only the personality disorders of the abusive people. I
mhm.
needed to learn all sorts of terms and phrases like um, word salad, gaslighting, scapegoat, flying monkeys. You have significant losses when you decide to muster up the courage to escape a situation, and you realize so many of us lose our support system of
Yeah,
friends, family, neighbors.
mm,
It's your life is never the same. And
yeah,
so it was shocking to go through this, but at the same
yeah,
time I had a heart that was filled with love. I was
mm,
filled with gratitude.
yeah,
I believe God did come to my garage sale to give me
yeah,
reassurance that I was loved and supported during this challenging time. And
yeah,
so I found, you know, strength within myself, but also in research. And then, like so many other people that, are on their healing journey, to reach out to other people. There's no better way than books and words and having candid conversations and letting other people know that they're not alone going
right,
through this.
right,
So that's how
exactly.
it came to be.
Wow. Now let's go to some words that you mentioned because I think a lot of people are intrigued. I definitely am intrigued by these words you just put out. Narcissistic abuse. Everyone thinks that abuse is just in the form of physical. Tell us, what is the definition of narcissistic abuse and what does a narcissistic abuser look like?
Well, that's a great question because, yes, when you think of domestic violence, so many people think of, broken bones and bruises. And
Mhm,
even though I was physically assaulted right at the end,
mhm.
the
Okay.
majority. of my abuse and so many other people's abuse is emotional.
Yes.
And you know, a narcissist, there are many definitions and types of narcissism. There's covert, malignant, vulnerable narcissists, which are secret agent men and secret agent women that are out to intentionally harm people, but they do it in a way that is not easily recognizable,
Hmm.
as opposed to the overt narcissists who are,
Mhm.
full of themselves and out there and everything is about them. And,
Mhm.
labels are good because they help you understand what you're dealing with. You know what to look up to learn about the traits and characteristics. But labels are also bad because, they don't always define exactly what an individual is going through.
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
so narcissistic abuse is when, you are abused by a narcissist, someone that
Yes.
is most definitely and usually undiagnosed because they don't think anything is wrong with them. They
Yeah.
point the finger at everyone else. They play the victim. They create false narratives with lies and half
Yeah.
truths, and they can get people to align with them. It's unbelievable that they can
Yeah.
get lawyers and judges and school officials and community members, and of course, your friends, family, and neighbors, and even your children to believe a false narrative, even though people have experienced you much differently than how they are describing. Um,
Right. Right.
yeah,
So that kind of leads us into that you sort of something you just mentioned, that parental alienation.
yeah,
So a narcissistic person can paint a picture for the children to
right.
alienate the other parent.
Right. Well, they want to destroy their ex in any way that they can. That's why, unfortunately, at least once a week, there's a headline of a spouse murdering the other spouse because they don't want them to enjoy a beautiful life without them. They're obsessed.
Mhm.
They
Yeah.
stalk, they harass, and they want to take away everything that's important to you, your
Right.
safety, your stability, your home, your money. And then when they realize, you're not going to be broken by those things,
Right.
um, especially the people that are empathetic, loving beings that, try to forgive and understand the dynamics of everything, see their role in things as well,
Right.
then
Right.
these abusers will use the children as a weapon against the
Yeah.
parent. And there are loving dads and loving moms that don't
Yeah.
have their children in their lives because of parental alienation, which is
Yeah.
just, the kids align with the abusing parent, whether it's a dad or mom, um,
Ugh.
because they live in fear of that parent. They know the other parent's love is unconditional.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and so they paint this false narrative and get the children to fear the other parent or
Mhm.
blame
Mhm.
them, or even if, like in my case, my children were 20 and 23 years old when I
Well,
chose to
adults.
divorce. So they were adults. You would think that they would know better, but
Right.
some people, some researchers, in addition to describing parental alienation as child abuse or intimate partner violence,
Yeah.
they compare it to a cult and how
Wow.
adults can, align with an abusing cult leader, uh,
Oh,
because they are believing a false narrative.
yes. Yes.
They are coerced. They're gaslit. They're
Right.
gaslit to question their own worth and their own ability, and they're gaslit, to where they kind of end up being dependent on the abuser, and that's what they want. They want
Right.
isolation and they want dependence. And so I had to learn the hard way about all of that.
Yeah.
Um, Although now that I know about this, there are many resources out there for people to learn about this. And my writing, my 5, soon to be 6 book series, True
Right.
Deceit False Love, is
Right.
really just to contribute to the resources that are already out there, just a different creative approach that
Yeah.
might resonate with some people
Yeah.
on
Yes.
their journey, you know,
Exactly.
to get to safety,
Exactly.
to get to healing, to get to living a happy life, because
Yes.
it takes time. It's a very challenging dynamic to understand and to work through.
Right, exactly. Well, that leads me to the third word that you threw out. It was a phrase, intergenerational trauma.
Yeah, intergenerational family trauma.
Okay. Okay. Is that like, I've heard of people talk about generational curses. Is
Sure.
that the same kind of thing?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's you know, all of us have challenges and adversity in our families.
Yes.
People just don't like to talk about it.
Right.
But sometimes you can go back and see that there are some patterns, like maybe, your father abused your mother and you witnessed all of that as a child. And
Right.
so you end up choosing a partner in life that's familiar to what you know or what your idea of what love is. And so
Right.
then you just continue the patterns until someone in this intergenerational dynamic says enough is enough, and they
Right.
bring awareness to this and they stop it
Right.
by many times you have to set up very healthy boundaries and step back from family members that you love dearly,
Yes.
but are not supportive of you, that they don't understand, or they actually sabotage your healing.
Right.
They can contribute to the abuse, and
Right.
you realize, wow, I've been gaslit by this family member as well, and the buck stops here. I need to bring awareness to this, even though it's very hard to
Mhm.
separate from family members because we're conditioned that our family is everything. You need to stay loyal to them no matter what. But at some point, that's not necessarily the healthiest thing for yourself or
Right.
even for them.
Right.
If you stay in a relationship with a family member and just kind of go along status quo without talking about the elephant in the room, or having candid conversations, if that's not part of your communication, you're really contributing to their false narrative too. So
Right. Exactly.
in the healing journey, I have found through myself, but also through countless others that have walked this path, that knowledge is power, self-reflection is important. um, Researching is definitely key. Reading books can be extremely helpful. Listening to podcasts um,
Yes.
help bring it alive, and you know makes this discussion more accessible for people,
Right.
because lots of times we've been trained to not share, not talk about this stuff. We've been
Don't tell your
shamed.
business. Don't
Yeah,
tell your business. Your
don't air
your
your dirty.
grandmother, your mother, they all tell you, "Don't tell you that family business. Keep it
Yeah, don't
quiet."
don't air that dirty laundry. And
Right.
really, I'm not out to say anything negative about anyone else. I'm talking about myself and
Right.
my healing journey and what I have learned. And there's something to say for having the strength to be able to acknowledge what you've gone through, see your role in it, learn about it, and then some people go so far as to write books about it, and some people write very autobiographical accounts. I was not interested in doing that. I wanted to provide some healing resources in a
Yeah.
creative way, just kind of the teacher in me, to
Right.
help others while I was on my healing journey. And what helped me in writing was very helpful to me, because words have the power to hurt people, but words
Yes.
also have the power to heal people.
Yes, most definitely. I see you in a partnership with NAMI, NAMI, the National Association of Mental Illnesses, maybe? But I
Right.
do
There
know
are,
it's
I've heard from
NAMI.
that organization. There are many different, um, or different, I don't know what you call it, branches or whatever throughout the
Right,
nation. And,
right.
and I've actually heard that people have taken my books and used them as resources to help them
Yes.
navigate, just the family traumas and the
Yeah.
dynamics.
Yes, very much needed. And last but not least, I wasn't planning on asking this, but you did mention this word, and I think more and more people know what this word means actually. But just in case someone is listening or viewing this podcast and they're bewildered about the word gaslight or gaslighting, go ahead and give us a definition of that as well.
Right. And there are many definitions of gaslighting, but the understanding that seems to be most common is that, someone intentionally discounts your thoughts, your beliefs, your actions, your interests,
Right,
and they slowly get you convinced that you didn't see what you saw. You didn't hear
right,
what you heard. You're not
right,
as capable or
right.
intelligent enough to handle a certain situation. um Gaslighting can be done by by a malevolent spouse, but it can also be
Mhm.
done by family members or even friends.
Mhm.
You can see gaslighting in the workplace where
Yes.
where there's competition to get ahead, and one person will slowly put down you or your work, to build themselves up.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
actually, gaslighting is from the 1944 movie
Mm.
from that same title, Gaslighting. And it's
Oh,
a story of a married couple, and one spouse slowly turns down the gas lights. They didn't have the regular electricity as we
okay.
know it now, but and
Yeah.
they would take the keys and hide them and misplace them just to find them and say, look, you always misplace everything. Here, they're right here. I found them. Oh, the lights are not dim. What is wrong with your eyesight? And
Oh
so,
my gosh.
little by little, someone who is very intelligent and capable doesn't feel that intelligent or capable after they
Right,
have been gaslit. And
right.
in parental alienation, the abusing parent, whether it's a father or mother, can actually gaslight the children to make
Yeah,
them question their worth and their abilities, to get them dependent, to get them isolated, so that
right.
so the abuser can control the narrative.
Yes. Yes,
And the
yes, yes.
narrative is false. There's outright lies, there's believable half truths. It's
Right.
unbelievable the extent that some people will go, the energy they take to
Mhm.
try to destroy another person and put them down just to build them up and keep their false persona going. In fact,
Exactly.
all of my books, they all
Mhm.
have an abuser on the cover with
Yep.
a mask, and the mask is slipping. And that's what
Ah,
a term that is used, the mask slips, when
mm.
the narcissistic abuser accidentally usually shows their true colors. And if
Yes.
you're ready,
Yes.
because many of us aren't ready. For many, many years, we ignore red flags. For years, our gut
Right,
intuition that tells us, get away, escape.
right,
This isn't healthy.
right,
Your values of honesty and fidelity and fiscal responsibility are not aligning with who you are with.
right,
Get out while you can before it's
right.
too late. We ignore
Exactly.
that. And
Yes.
until finally, one of the times when the mask slips, we are ready to pay attention,
Right.
and our light bulb goes on, and we have a choice. Do we want to stay status quo and go along living a lie that turns out
Right.
to be extremely abusive,
Right.
or do we muster up the courage to honor ourselves enough to
Exactly.
reclaim our lives, and
Yes.
and get away. I mean, I moved to the Caribbean from the Chicago suburbs. I
I
moved
see.
thousands and thousands of miles away, but my abuser still stalks me and harasses me. It's been
Oh,
over 10 years since I filed for divorce, and he still has me back in the court system and with chaos and
oh my
false
gosh.
information. I mean, they're obsessed. That's what happens.
Oh
And
my.
knowledge is power, though. I think
Mm.
this could really put someone into a state of depression, or other emotions if they didn't look at books and learn about this and read about it.
Mm.
In fact, any parent who has lost a child, and I'm going on close to a decade without my
Mhm.
beautiful children in my life, it
Oh,
is unbelievable that any parent would have to experience this, but
yeah,
with God's love and with
yes,
the inner knowing that you are honest and true and you've done the best that you possibly can,
yeah,
um, in bringing awareness, whatever, then you know that you can put one foot in front of the other. But
exactly.
research really does help. I mean, and I'm testament. I'm living a beautiful life in the Caribbean. Yes,
Yes,
I have losses that are significant, but
yes,
the gains that I have, you know, outweigh that in so
right.
many ways. Yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. There is so much to that that we don't have time for but today, but there is so much there. Well, let's now get to which this is still going towards the end results of a mental health journey and the books that you wrote for that. Let's go to God Came to My Garage Sale, and it makes me chuckle every time. And so you actually live these experiences.
Yeah.
Now, but you told me that this woman, the atheist woman, the woman's an atheist in the
Yeah.
book. She's the protagonist. So was that you? Were you an atheist or
Yes,
agnostic or
yes.
okay,
No,
so
the whole book is inspired by true events and true
okay.
experiences. And yes, I grew up in my childhood. I had no exposure to organized religion or spirituality. I grew up in an atheist household. Now
Okay.
personally, as I got older, when I was in college, I sought out, more because I
Right.
believed in my heart there was more.
Yes.
So, but the character in the story, um, we don't go into the background of the character. We don't even go into the domestic abuse of the character. I
Right.
I,
Yeah.
I wrote many, just like many authors, you write
Mhm.
many versions of your story, and you're
Okay.
editing and you're tweaking it and changing it at all times. And I wanted this book, God Came to My Garage Sale, to just be filled with love and light and to help people pay attention to signs and synchronicities. So I didn't
Mhm.
address
Mhm.
the negative things at all. But,
Right.
yes, the character, after experiencing hundreds of dragonflies circle her, or, specifically dated pennies and feathers and levitating people and dream visitations and all sorts of amazing spiritual miracles that are called STEs, spiritually transformative encounters, very much
Oh,
like an NDE, which is like a near death experience. Those things encouraged the character, and myself included, to pay attention to signs and synchronicities. And the character asks after each chapter, did God come to my garage sale? Because the miracles were just amazing. So
wow. Wait a minute. Spiritual what?
STE stands for spiritually transformative encounters or experiences. And that is a term that was coined by Dr. Yvonne Kaysen fairly recently in the 80s and 90s,
Mhm.
because there are thousands and thousands of people that have had these experiences. They've even had you too, okay. And we needed to put a name to this. And a lot of attention was given to people who had near death experiences
Yeah,
and even
yeah.
scientific proof to show, yes, our consciousness continues beyond our physical death. That is being scientifically proven. But
Mm.
the STEs happen to so many people, and we are just now talking about them. So you had an STE.
Oh my gosh. I have had several. Let me just tell you really quickly of just maybe one or two.
I'd love to
My
hear it.
mother died in 1996. I had been married for about a year. And at that time, I worked at a radio station, a local radio station. And so this particular day, I was just having it tough. I was just having it tough, feeling lonely and tired and, just grieving that particular day at the radio station. So it was at the end of the day, I put on my jacket, and it was a jacket that my mother had bought for me when I was much, much younger, but I could still fit into that jacket. So I was just talking to a coworker, winding down the day, getting ready to go out of the office, and I was talking to them about a whole different subject, but inside I was about to break down.
Mhm.
And then I reached into my pocket and I was like, well, what is this? I thought it was maybe, you have tissues maybe in your
Mhm.
pocket. Well, this was more than a tissue. I pulled it out and it was one of my mother's handkerchiefs.
Wow.
And it was, and I'm not a handkerchief person. I'm
Yeah.
not a handkerchief person at all. And it was one of hers specifically. And I felt like that was her reaching out to me to say, you're going to be okay. I'm here. And I know you're feeling me. And I was just floored when
Yeah.
that happened.
And
I was just
actually,
floored.
the research shows that if you have that immediate instant reaction that it is your mother and you are getting a message, chances are it is your mother and you are getting a message.
Oh
So
my
wonderful, wonderful that that happened
God.
to you.
Wow,
Mhm.
wow, that and, one other one.
Yeah.
I used to after I graduated from college, sometimes it goes, can't find a job immediately that would be of your college level or in your major or whatever. So, I was working in retail. And one night, it was a quiet night that I was working retail. I worked the furniture department in this particular store. I was the only associate there that night. And a lady comes in, a little petite lady. She has white hair. She has on a white blouse and black pants. And she says, hi, I would like to see the lampshades. I need a lampshade. I said, okay. So I took her over to the lampshades and I started talking about the lampshades and this and that and the other. And so once I got finished, she was like, and I can't remember the specific words, but it was what was affecting me then. She said something, let's just say to the degree of, you know, you have to be happy with what you have and you have to be da 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 da. And I was like, satisfied with what you've got and such and such and such and such. And I was like, oh my goodness, everything she was saying was speaking directly to me.
Right. Yeah.
She was not interested in the
No.
lampshades whatsoever. And she just kept speaking to me.
Mhm.
And then so I went in the back, then we jumped back to the lampshade. So I went in the back to go get her a lampshade to show her. I come out and she is gone.
Okay, that is a spiritual experience. Definitely. So that is an angel coming to you, some higher power that came to you to give you that message that you needed at that time. I
Mhm.
write about in my spiritual fiction, God Came to My Garage Sale.
Yes.
One of my chapters is the old man in the white suit. And I had a similar experience where an old man, he actually looked like my seventh and eighth grade English teacher, Mr.
Mhm.
Bright. But this old man came to my garage sale looking for frames, looking at the frames. Yet his interactions with me had nothing to do with the frames. And it was something that I needed to hear and experience at that time. And he never bought the frames. In fact, I never saw him leave. And he was gone. And even though he sat down with me and we had a very deep conversation, you would think, especially from the Midwest, that someone would say goodbye or have some kind of
Right.
closure to your interaction. Nope, he was gone just as fast as he came, and I never saw him even come. So that happens. And because we can talk about these things now, we can talk about them because they're happening to a lot of
Yeah.
people now, but they're also remembering things that have happened in the past, like that very similar situation. You were touched by some divine higher power, and
Yes.
the fact that you recognize that, and it stayed
Yeah.
with you, that is what's
Yes.
called an STE, spiritually transformative experience or encounter. Yeah.
I am so glad I am talking to you today because you've cleared up. You have, and this, I am going to go a step further to say this interview is some type of intervention or
Definitely.
experience
Definitely.
because you,
We started out talking about books. This was all going to be about books, yet I
right?
shared some of my personal story, and now we're talking about the spiritual encounters, and that is reaching
Yes,
you personally. Maybe
yes,
this is all about this, not about
yes.
the books. Yeah.
Yes, yes. But I'm telling you, you've brought more than you know to me today in this interview. And I'm
Oh,
hoping, listeners and viewers, that you too have recognized some truths in your life. And one thing we're going to do, and I always do, we're going to have Marnie's contact information below in the podcast show notes, also in the YouTube channel video description. We're going to have links to her books, we're going to have links to her website, etc. And I'm saying if you're the least bit affected by this interview, you need to buy her books, whether it's the spiritual fiction or whether it's the books more about actual mental health conditions and traumas that come out of that. You need to dive in. And I do a specific, and it will fall under this playlist too, Marnie. I do a specific playlist called Mental Health Awareness. So
mhm.
people will be able to find this not only in the writer's workshop journey, but also in the mental health awareness and the big overview, broad podcast in general.
Well,
Marnie,
thank
I'm
you.
very
Well,
full.
our
I'm really,
voices matter. Our voices matter. Our words matter.
yes,
Sharing conversations with people and connecting with people matter more now than it's ever mattered in the history of the world. Because really,
yes,
in many ways, we are experiencing a collective, universal, global spiritual awakening for so many of
yes.
us. Yes.
Yes,
So,
I agree. I
yeah.
totally 100% agree with that. And I don't know, maybe you and I, who knows if you think this also, I think the pandemic brought about a lot of this stuff. When we were
Well,
all in that whole atmosphere and had
right?
that
Not
whole
only the
gigantic,
pandemic, but just all the lies and deceit and corruption and fraud being exposed. And
yes,
then there's the truth tellers, the honest people saying like, what's
yes,
going on here? Why can't
yes,
people see this? Why,
yes,
so there is a real, you know, there is a division. I mean, of course, some of these global tyrants are trying to make division in people, but we are more alike than we are different, the
yes,
people
yes,
on earth. And but we are
yes,
starting to see the light, and
yes,
there are some people that are moving one way in a journey, and others that are moving another way in a journey, and we have to realize we all have a journey on this earth. And
yes.
but books can bring us together in so many ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I do believe your books will bring people together and healing for a lot, for healing for many.
Mm.
Dr. Marnie, we may have to reconvene at some time in the future.
Sounds
I
good.
just thank you so much for joining me today at the Bookaholic podcast.
Well, thank you so much, Deirdre, for having me on your podcast. And it's just been delightful connecting with you and having this conversation. And, may
Most
God bless
definitely.
you. And,
Yes.
it's wonderful things that you are doing, with your podcast, with your workshops. You are reaching countless people, and that's an amazing thing. So thank you for what you are doing.
Thank you so much, doctor. I really appreciate you.
Yeah.
I'm very full right now. Thank you so much.